So in 2014, early in 2014, I found myself back in Tacoma, Washington after 3 years away. I'd co-founded Sky in 2010, and then my partner's job had taken us overseas to Korea. And when I came back, I felt fairly certain, really certain actually, that I was not going to get re-involved with the organization, only because it seemed to be doing really well without me, and I didn't want to reinsert myself where I wasn't needed. And a little while after I came back, the executive director whom I'd hired before I left invited me to tea and at Karina Bakery. And of course, why would I say no to that? And so I showed up, and it took about 2 seconds. I don't know, I saw her face and realized this was not going to be like a happy tea. She was really distressed. She shared with me that she was feeling really depleted, really exhausted, and that she really had some pretty deep concerns about the sustainability of the organization. Not necessarily regarding funding, but really just her own energy and her own ability to continue to show up and do the work that was required every day. When I co-founded Sky with Pamela Higley in 2010, our original mission was to make yoga accessible and affordable to people of all incomes and abilities. And the studio had been doing that for several years at this point, mostly through lower than average costs for just regular drop-in classes, multiple free classes per week, and then also some really targeted outreach. For years, we've partnered with Nativity House, with the Rainbow Center, with Mercy Housing, with Mother Earth Farms. We've really made an explicit invitation to people who are often marginalized by the yoga community. So people living with trauma, people living with injury and illness, and then elders. And in addition to that, we've offered classes that really anybody could do. You could walk in off the street, which is often what happens in our community class, wearing anything you want to be wearing, in any condition, and do some yoga. And so as an outsider at that point really looking in, it seemed like that was all happening, and it was happening. But here was my executive director in tears saying she didn't know how it was going to keep happening. And so we started talking about what we could do. What are some things that might, I almost said might could, I'm going to say it, might could happen. And an idea that came up was that she, like many executive directors of small nonprofits, was spending a lot of her time kind of managing the board. I'm sure none of you know what that's like. And she thought, well, you know, the current board president is also as exhausted as I am and is ready to be gone. Maybe you could join the board and kind of get the board managing itself. And so with a very large amount of trepidation and several conversations with my husband where he begged me not to, I agreed to join the board. So I attended my first board meeting and was promptly voted in as board president. And then spent the next month kind of setting up some what I thought were completely reasonable expectations around like email communication, regular communication, board attendance, fundraising, and within very short order, about 2/3 of the board quit for varying reasons, but and so there I was with a shrunken board. And really like a lack of information because I'd been gone for 3 years and a lot of my institutional memory had just walked out the door. And so I just thought, well, let's figure it out. So I started kind of investigating what's going on here, what's the board been up to? And it took me not a very long time at all to realize that the board had been spending all of their time putting on these 2 big fundraising events every year. There was immense passion for these 2 events, and they were pretty well attended, and they were fun, but they weren't bringing in the kind of money that we needed, and they were that was all the board had time to do. There was no time for governance, there was no time for strategic planning, and there wasn't even time for them to really manage themselves. And the other thing that I came to realize was that while the board was really excited about what we were doing in the community, they didn't really seem to have a real deep understanding or connection to why we were doing it. And so as I began to plan my first board retreat as board president, I decided we were going to really spend a good amount of time on that, on the why. Why are we doing this? Why are you here? And I asked them to tell us, those of us who were gathered, what's the why behind the why behind the why? Not the short answer you give at cocktail parties or like the thing that you say to feel good about why you're doing it, but really, why are you here? And as people began to share around the room, I was watching the circle getting closer to me, and I had this moment of, why the hell am I here? Because I said I wasn't never going to be here again. And I knew why I was there, but really why? Why was I here again in this place? You know, when I co-founded Sky with my co-founder Pamela, she and I really connected and resonated over the fact that we'd both come to yoga through trauma. When I was 26, I was living in New York. I had a very successful career, a fantastic life, or so I thought. And everything kind of came crashing down around me. I was raped and my life fell apart. I lost my job, I lost my apartment. More than that, I really lost any connection to myself, to my body, and certainly any connection to like even a desire to live. The psychiatrist that I saw right after, I'd have to check in with him pretty regularly, and he would always ask me all the same questions. Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Have you thought about killing yourself? And I would always answer the same. I'd say, is wishing you were dead the same thing? And he'd say, nope, you're good. And so that was kind of my life. Because I could no longer really make a living and I wasn't working, I had to go stay with my brother who lived in Chicago. And I would spend my days in my brother's home, feeling somewhat consoled that wanting to die was not as troublesome as other things I could be feeling. And one day, my brother came to me. He and my therapist had been conspiring to get me to go to a yoga class. I'd been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, with dissociative disorder, with severe anxiety and depression. And yoga is great for all of those things. Most people know that now. And I said, hell no. I am absolutely not going to bend like a pretzel. I don't want to do that. That sounds awful and terrible, and I'll just stay here, thank you. And my brother is an excellent salesman and an even better older brother. And he was very patient with me, and very slowly, and you don't know my brother, so you don't know how amazing it is that he had this amount of patience, but it took weeks to get me into a yoga class. There was a studio just a few blocks from his home. And once I finally actually made my way into the studio space, I just lied down on the mat and I sobbed. And that's all I could do. I just laid there and I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried some more. And what was really powerful for me about that experience was that it was really the only place that I could do that, and nobody expected me to do anything else. Those of us who've experienced trauma know that very often you end up spending a lot of your time kind of consoling other people about what's happened to you. And so it was such a relief to not have to make anybody else feel better about how bad I was feeling. I could just really be there and cry. And it was astounding to me that these yoga teachers didn't want to bend me into a pretzel. They just were willing to bear witness to my pain. They were willing to bear witness to my sorrow. They didn't need me to be anything other than what I was. And it was really that willingness on their part to let me be exactly as I was, to enter that space exactly as I was, that kind of gave me any desire or interest in standing up and remembering that I was actually a very capable, strong person who could breathe and who could even want to live, or at least not want to die every second. And it was really, in the months that followed, that the dream for Sky was born in my heart. I really wanted to create a place where people could experience what I had experienced. And as I shared this story with the board, I just became aware that what had happened over the course of the years since I'd founded the place is that I'd kind of lost sight of or just forgotten that what had been truly transformative about yoga for me wasn't the yoga itself, but it was that the yoga inspired an opportunity for connection and love and really mutual healing to happen. And mutuality became what I realized was the thing. That those yoga teachers, and I don't know if any of you practice yoga regularly, but if you do, you know that the experience I had in that studio is not normal. You can walk into a lot of yoga studios and not be allowed to just sit and cry. So it was really special. It was really special. And in their willingness to see me, they were also letting me see them and see who they were. And that had been so powerful. And so as I was looking at where the organization was, a highly depleted staff, lots of good stuff happening out in the community, but just an exhausted staff, I realized that what was missing was this mutuality, was work where it wasn't just about serving those people that need us. It was about realizing that the true gift of community, the true gift of relationships is mutuality. And that actually, if to experience this connection and mutual healing, you have to make relationships central to everything that you're doing. So we reorganized the whole place. We went from a very traditional nonprofit model of leadership, so, like executive director and then everybody else, board looming, and I did loom as board president, to a non-hierarchical model of leadership. We tipped the triangle and rounded out the edges. We went from having one executive director to 4 co-directors, and we adopted organization-wide commitments to being in mutual relationships, so to give and receive feedback, to practice radical honesty and radical vulnerability. And to really turn on its head what happens in the yoga industry, and I think in the nonprofit industry, which is this idea that we on this side of the desk serve those people on that side of the desk, that we're not really about service so much as relationship. And what this has allowed for is spaciousness. We have so much space because we can't say that we're offering for other people to come as you are, come exactly as you are, you don't have to be anything other than what you are, come into our space, if we're not actually providing that for each other. And what this model has allowed us to do is share responsibility, share joy, share heartache, share it all, and give each other that. Some of the ways that manifests when you walk into our doors is as a trauma-aware space, we say, one of our little phrases that we use is, make sure your words and your feelings always match. And so what that means is that when you meet one of our staff members, they might not be happy. They might not be chirpy, wise yogis. They might be sad. I taught a class this morning where I could barely move because I took a big spill yesterday, and I was able to share that. And what was so beautiful about that was my students were able to be there for me and be with me in my discomfort. And this has really deeply affected the way that we raise funds as well, because when you make relationships central to everything that you do, it completely changes the way you ask for money. We don't ask for money in the same way anymore. We ask for people to be in relationship with us, to kind of buy into our work, and to be in this mutual place of giving and receiving. This past year, we did away with our 2 big fundraising events, and we just have one easy fundraising event. It's the easiest one that we do. It's Yoga in the Park. It's in Wright Park every year. And we had our most successful fundraising to date. We raised more money by a lot than we ever have. And that was great, but that was great. But what was really great about this was that it was the most easeful and joyous experience of raising money. We made several commitments to each other as a staff that we were gonna participate in love, connection, and mutual healing at all times. We were gonna take care of ourselves and each other. We were gonna go to bed early, and we were gonna shut off all of our electronics by 9 o'clock that entire month leading up to the event. And we did it, and it was fantastic, and it was joyful. And in terms of the people that come through our doors, some of the feedback that we've gotten about this new model is that they feel really honored by our willingness to be seen by them. That every time that we're vulnerable with them, they feel like they can be more vulnerable with us, which only increases the capacity for us to hold space and be together in our heartache and in our joy. Something that I have observed in nonprofits, especially small nonprofits, is that there's a tendency to separate ourselves from the folks who are receiving our services. And sometimes we're just so focused on what we're doing and the programs we're running and what's happening out there that it's very easy to either miss or maybe we don't want to see what can be quite dysfunctional on the back end, right? Where we're offering something to our clients that we're not even willing to give ourselves and each other. And what I know to be true is that when we really stay connected to the why behind the why behind the why behind the why to what we're doing, we make contact once again with our heartache, with that place inside of us that is a little bit broken, that place inside of us that is seeking healing. And when we're seeking healing, we will automatically, like moths to a flame, move towards healthy relationships where we can find that healing, where we can be in mutual healing. Thank you.